What's up guys, and welcome back to another video on my channel. This is a returning series called the tier system. Now, you guys have seen people do tier lists for all sorts of things. I used to do them for everything, ranking Premier League managers. I actually looked back at that video this morning and realized how wrong I was about some managers. I apologize, Patrick Vieira. I'm not as bad as I thought you were going to be. Yeah, everything. Just everything basically. I did football kits, I did transfer windows, and there will be a tier list on my opinion of every club's transfer window in the Premier League, but that'll be once the window is finished, which is currently the 30th of, you can't see, it's currently the 30th of August when I'm recording this, so that video will be out at some point within a week or so of the deadline of the transfer window finishing. This video is going to be me ranking every single role I have used or tried on Football Manager 2022 this year. Now, there's going to be a couple of roles on there. There's a couple of roles that aren't on there, which you're like, how has he not tried that? If there's a role I don't mention that I haven't tried, and you think that could be a benefit, drop it in the comments. I'll give it a try, play around with it, see what I think. There's loads of roles on there. I think there's only maybe 6 or 7 I've missed out that I've not even bothered to look at this year. So I can't really comment on what that role would do for the tactics I built without using it. I think that's fair to say. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Make sure you like and subscribe as well. So here we go then. We have my original tier list is back, slightly different background, but it's back and the face cam's changed to a circle because it just looks nicer. We've got title winners. They are the top of the top. You must have those roles in your tactic for this year. Top 4, they're good roles. Partner with the right roles, you're going to build a great tactic, but the role itself isn't going to be elite necessarily in your team. Mid-table, they're your comfort roles. They're the roles in which you kind of have to have it, but it doesn't necessarily carry you to the next level. You've got your relegation fighters, roles in which I would never use personally, but in certain types of situations, depending on what you're trying to achieve with a certain club, you may need those roles. And your championship, they are your bottom of your bottom roles. Don't touch them in a million years. They're terrible. They don't work. Again, my opinion, but yeah. Let's start then. Let's start with the goalkeeper role. I've got divided into 3 columns: attacking, midfielder, and defensive roles. So you can see some of the roles there already, and we'll talk about each as we go. The goalkeeper role for me is mid-table. Now, I'll tell you why. I think the modern day game requires a sweeper keeper, whether that's a sweeper keeper on defend, support, attack, whether that's whether you've got a bad goalkeeper, as long as they're relatively quick and they're not woeful. I think for me personally, every team requires a sweeper keeper. I don't think I've seen many tactics this year that haven't had a sweeper keeper, and I think for me personally, you're losing out if you don't use one. So while the goalkeeper role isn't necessarily bad, it's not going to take you to the elite level. So for me, mid-table. Let's go with the... Let's go with the false 9. Now, I've actually had quite a lot of success with the false 9 this year. I had a false 9 in a Roma tactic. I had the false 9 in a 4-4-2 I built, very similar to the one I had last year. And I feel like they're quite effective. If you've got the right kind of mold, you've got a player who can play the passes. They need to be as good a passing almost as they are shooting for me in the false 9 role personally. Kane's quite a good player in that role. Gabriel Jesus, if you actually look at his stats this year, if you play him in a 2-man up top, I think he's perfect for the false 9 role. So it all depends on what kind of system you're playing. You've obviously got to play 2 up top. I don't really feel like the false 9 works on his own. I feel like the false 9 works best when it's in a 3-man triangle with an advanced forward, the false 9, and another role, which I'm not going to tell you about just yet. But yeah, I think that's the kind of combination it works well with. Not really had success with a false 9 singularly on my own. I tried a Liverpool-based tactic where the central centre forward was a false 9. Didn't really work for me personally. Again, you guys might have a single striker formation where the single striker is a false 9 and it might work incredibly, and that's great. But for me, I didn't have much success with it. So yeah, it goes in top 4. Let's go to now a role which my opinion has changed on this year. And we're going to go to the fullback role. I don't think the fullback role is as bad as I thought it was. For me, I always used to go wingback. Never really tried anything else. A friend of mine started using the fullback role recently, and I think the fullback role on attack can be really beneficial if you're trying to have a tight-knit defense. Naturally, the fullback role is more defensive-minded. It tries to, you know, his aim isn't to get high and wide like the wingback roles are. So, like, it can be good on attack. I feel like if you're using it on anything else, I don't personally think it's a good idea. Maybe if you're holding out a game, last minute, bring on a centre-back that can play out wide, full-back role, defend, almost got 4 centre-backs, tightly compact, then maybe it works. But for me, if you're going to use it, it's that counter-attacking style, very much a fixed defence. For me personally, I wouldn't recommend necessarily using it otherwise, but I don't think it's actually a bad role in itself. I think it just fits a very, very specific way of playing. Let's go with the defensive winger next. It's shit. For me, the defensive winger should only be used in very, very specific situations. And part of those situations is when you're holding out a lead. If it's 2-1, you're down to 10 men, drop your wingers back on defensive wingers, drop your midfield back, 1 striker up front. You know, aim to be tight, to be compact. I've tried using the defensive winger in a back 3 where they're not actually wing backs, they're defensive wingers, and I don't really feel like they actually offer as much defensive support as you need them to. And if you're playing with 2 natural wingers, I don't necessarily feel like they don't offer anything anywhere near as what you expect going forward, which a defensive winger they're not meant to. But I struggle to find a role in which they play, and unless you're trying to go 10 men behind the ball and hold out a game, I struggle to find a role in which they play which is actually beneficial. So for me, defensive winger goes in relegation fighters. Let's go with box-to-box midfielder. Your box-to-box midfielders are your standard. They are your... Everyone needs one in their team. You need a good one. They can be pivotal, attacking and defending. For me, the box-to-box midfielder role is one of the most important roles this year. Doesn't quite get into title winner because I feel like there are other roles I've discovered which have the same kind of principle, which offer more defending or attacking. But for me, a box-to-box midfielder, if you've got a 3-man midfield, it has to have one. If you've got a 2-man midfield, I'd argue you probably still have to have one, depending on what kind of system and what style you're playing. I love the box-to-box midfielder role. There's so many players that fit it this year at the elite level and that don't actually cost an arm and a leg. There'll be a video at the end. You can check out my favourite midfield positions in Football Manager 2022. In that video, I show quite a few of them. But yeah, the box-to-box midfielder role for me gets into top 4 easily. The central midfielder role. Title winners. Absolutely love it. And do you know what? I've never ever experienced this before until a guy called RDF Tactics. If you don't know him, if you're in part of the FM community, you should know him already. He did a video with Roma where he built a 4-3-3 and had Vertut as a central midfielder on attack. He hit 20-odd goals for the season in all competitions. And I said to myself, do you know what? Let me play around with it. Played around with it. Didn't have a lot of success. Left it. And then I built a back 3 system this year where I played with a central midfielder on attack and a central midfielder on support. And it's been brilliant. And I've used the central midfield role in every tactic I've built since, back 3, back 4, whatever. I've used the central midfielder role. For me personally, I like it on attack. Players like Fabian, players like Rodrigo de Paul, players like that are a perfect fit for that role. And if you haven't used it, yeah, 100% recommend it. I would say... if you're a Europa League club or better, it'll work for you if you've got the right mold of player in. I would say if you're anything less than that, you might struggle to buy a player that's well-rounded enough to play that role. But for me personally, you could maybe try box-to-box midfielder there. You could try attacking midfielder if it's on support. You know, Dani Olmo is quite a good example. His defending isn't tragic, so he can play that role. It's quite an aggressor in the sense of it's willing to win the ball back as a central midfield player. Whereas your advanced playmakers, your attacking midfielders, their priority isn't to win the ball back. With the central midfielder role, even though it's an attack, They offer just as much going forward as they do defensively. And for me personally, if you want to go from getting top 4 or getting top 6 every year to challenging for the title, change your box-to-box midfielder to a central midfielder on support or on attack, get the right level of player in, and you won't regret it. Let's go to another role which has changed my opinion on this year, the inverted winger. I was always an inside forward guy, your Sons, your Salahs, your Manes, whatever, always an inside forward guy. However, back 3 tactic I built this year, I played with Newcastle. I had Lozano one side, Jared Bowen the other, and they weren't creating enough ultimately. I changed them to an inverted winger, but still on attack. And all of a sudden, their goal output increased as well as their goal contribution output. They look to score, but they also look to pass. They look to move into space, but they also look to release the ball. Inverted inside forwards, I feel like their direct job is just to go for goal where possible. And if you're playing a winger formation with a solo striker, for me, you need inverted wingers over inside forwards. I don't feel like they offer. I don't feel like inside forwards offer enough in terms of both sorts of output. So for me, that's why I put them there. Let's speed this up a little bit because we've got loads to get through. And I'll go with the inside forward role. I'm gonna go mid-table. Controversially, I just think the inside winger role offers you so much more than the inside forward role, and I don't really see a way in which the inside forward role holds a place for me in any future tactics. You never know, but once you change for me, I don't think you'll go back. Let's go with the wingback role. Good old wingback role. The wingback role is great. I like the wingback role. I think it's great on support, great on attack, still good on defend. The fullbacks get high and wide, which is what you want, especially in a narrow formation. If you've got a winger formation where the wingers are both on inside forward, then you want the wingback role because you want your wingbacks to get high and wide, give you the width. You've got 3 men in centrally then that can score goals. You've got a 3-man base of midfield, and it's a lot more structurally sound going forward than if you have a fullback role where they don't advance forward as much. Your wingers have to create the space, and you haven't got any external width beyond your wingers to create space. So for me, it goes in top 4. Sweeper keeper, title winners. I love the sweeper keeper. It's so much better than a normal goalkeeper. You should have one. If you haven't got one, get one. Easier said than done, really. Let's go with the winger role. I'm going to go relegation fighters. There's a time, like the defensive winger, there's a time and a place for the winger. And I feel like if you're in like a 4-4-2, for example, have wingers on attack, inverted wing backs into covering the central midfield, then I feel like they can work. I feel like in a standard 4-3-3, standard 4-4-2, if you're playing a system in which you're going to try and win the title, the winger role is not going to do it for you. Maybe it might do in certain games, but not consistently over the course of the season. The centre-back role, I believe, is actually underrated. I apologise, I'm having to keep moving these. They're not registering properly. The centre-back role, for me, I believe, is underrated as fuck. I think in a two-man defence, you need one. You need one who can kind of you need a centre-back, basically, who's not just looking to play the risky pass. You need a balance. For me this year, in a back 4, I've had a centre-back and then a ball-playing centre-back, or I've had 2 centre-backs, which might seem very defensive for teams going to win the title. But I feel like, while, yes, they create more, you can get that from your wing-backs. And I feel like sometimes you don't need your centre-backs putting more pressure on your defence and on themselves by making stupid mistakes, which is why I opt with the centre-back role, at least one of your 2 centre-backs. Let's go with target man. You play with a target man, you're going to get exactly where you end up, and that's the Championship. I don't like target men. I don't think they're beneficial. I feel like an advanced forward does the same thing and offers you more. I wouldn't use it unless you're in a relegation scrap in the last few games of the season. It's not worth it, in my opinion. Just not worth it. Ball-winning midfielder. I don't like the ball-winning midfielder role. It's too aggressive. It's too aggressive. I find that my ball-winning midfielders typically get sent off 6 or 7 times a season. They get stuck in too much. I know that's part of the role, but whether you're playing a 2-man midfielder, 3-man midfielder, 1-man midfielder, I feel like a ball-winning midfielder, sorry, just too risky. It's just too risky. They go in, they get stuck in, they often miss their challenges. The challenges are reckless, the challenges are aggressive. For me, it's not a role you want in a team going to win a title. To be honest, it's not really the only time I would put it on is if you're a relegation scrapping team. Personally, for me, I've changed my opinion on this role over the years. I used to use it a lot. Nah. Masala Roll. Now, the Masala Roll, for me, is top 4. It doesn't quite get to title winners because I don't really use it anymore, but the Masala Roll is great. It allows you to bridge the gap between the midfield and the attack. If you have the right kind of player in that role, you'll get a lot of success with it. For me, you need a 3-man midfield at least to have a Masala. If you're playing a 4-3-3, it's an absolute must. But for me, I only play with 2 men in midfield at the moment, so it's not really beneficial. But again, it is still one of those elite roles in Football Manager. It's been an elite role for a while, and I think it will continue to be. And another elite role, I think that's at the top of the top, arguably one of my favourite roles on Football Manager this year, and that's the Shadow Striker. Now, the Shadow Striker is just brilliant. They're unmarkable, they're untouchable, the late runs into the box, the finishes. Harry Kane, I've played a lot this year on the Shadow Striker role, and he's brilliant. Last minute runs into the box, knocking the ball on. I love him. I feel like he does everything a false 9 does, but it's just better. It's just better. If you're playing a 4-2-3-1, if you're playing a 4-1-2-1-2 narrow, which is what I'm experimenting with at the moment, if you basically play with any system where someone's behind a striker, to be a Shadow Striker role, absolutely must. I couldn't recommend a role more personally. Pressing forward is going in mid-table because I don't use it. I don't know if it's good or if it's bad, if I'm honest. I just find that an advanced forward does the job for me, so there's no need to have anything different. And on that, the advanced forward goes into title winners. It's just good, isn't it? It just does the job. I've never had an issue with an advanced forward at all. I don't understand why people would have an issue with an advanced forward. Yeah, don't really understand why anyone would have a problem with it personally. On to the next one then. I'm going to go with deep lying forward. Now, I'm going to go the deep lying forward in mid-table. I personally think a false 9 is better. I personally think a centre forward role is better. And of the 3 kind of supporting roles to an advanced forward, it's the last one I would use. I guess it does a job. Maybe it's worth me playing around with it more, but I feel like my output from a false 9, or more specifically from a centre forward, is greater than a deep lying forward. And on that, centre forward role goes into elite. If you can get a centre forward who can play the way you need him to play, with an advanced forward, a centre forward, and a shadow striker, it's just sensational. That's what I've got at the moment with Spurs. I've got Son, Kane, and Kulusevski, and it's absolutely sensational. I'm actually going to try Son in the centre forward role at some point as well. But for me, it's absolutely elite. I feel like the 3 roles together, those 3 roles in the attack in a narrow formation will take you to the title easily. And I couldn't recommend them higher. Attacking midfielder role and advanced playmaker role are both going to go into a relegation fight. They're probably not as bad as I make them out to be, but for me, I don't like them. I feel like they can be isolated. I feel like they can be man-marked easier, and I would much rather, if I'm not going to have a shadow striker, I'd much rather have my creativity from the wings and from attacking wing-backs than I would do from an attacking midfielder or an advanced playmaker. It's not a role I've ever got along with on Football Manager, if I'm honest. It's never really fit the way I want to play and the tactics I want to play. Might be good for yourselves, but for me, they're not. They're very far from my first choice. Ball-playing defender, I'm going to go top 4 because there's a risk element to it, right? And the reason why I like a centre-back and a ball-playing defender together, the 2 together become title winners. But one without the other, you have a centre-back on its own with an even more defensive centre-back, and your centre-backs don't create anything. You have 2 ball-playing defenders. They're very risky. They play expansive passes, which often concede you chances and concede you goals. But the two together are the perfect balance. Typically for me, I have the ball playing defender on the right and the centre back on the left. But it all depends on what kind of players you're bringing in. If I brought in, say, Bastoni and Harry Maguire, then I'd have Bastoni as the ball playing and Harry Maguire as the centre back. It all just depends. But yeah, for me, the two together are elite. The two on their own are just top four. The halfback role, I'm going to go with title winner. Now, this is controversial, right? Because a lot of people I've seen aren't massive fans of it. The halfback role allows you to play a back three without playing a back three, right? It allows you to have a player who drops into the centre-back spaces without having a permanent back three centre-back there. So they add something to the midfield and they drop something back. If you're looking at playing this role, Højbjerg's been really, really good for me. Fabinho is an elite level for that role. My mate used Jordan Henderson last year and he was really good in that role. Anyone who's 6'1" or 6'2" and above, good passing, good strength, good defending, good physical stats, you're sorted. An Anchorman. I'm going to go Championship because an Anchorman, they don't, for me personally, they've not offered anything going forward. They've not really offered anything defensively, just kind of sit. And I guess I know that's their role, but in Football Manager, you need players' roles to offer you something going forward and going back. And for me, the Anchorman, pretty much, he just stands there. He doesn't offer anything offensive. He doesn't really offer anything defensively. For me, it's not worth it. No nonsense centre back. That goes without saying. Championship. Essential centre back on defend does enough of the elements of a no nonsense centre back that you need, without just being a complete and utter who fit and hope kind of centre-back, which is what I feel like a no-nonsense centre-back is when I use it personally. If you're in a relegation scrap, you know you're not going to stay up, then two no-nonsense centre-backs might be the way forward. But if you want to achieve if you want to get into Europe at any point with any kind of club, no-nonsense centre-back should be the last role you're picking. Wide playmaker. It's just a bit shit. I've tried it. I find I get more from inverted wingers. I find I get more from a narrow formation with expansive wingbacks than I do from a wide playmaker. Again, like defensive winger, I feel like it's used in very specific circumstances. And for me personally, if you're going to play with a wide midfielder, the wide playmaking midfielder, just get wingers that are better that you can play there, if I'm honest. Complete wingback. I'm gonna go there. I've not really used it. I prefer wingback and I prefer inverted wingback, if I'm honest. I know some people might see that as controversial because a lot of people do use a complete wingback, especially on one side. Maybe if you've got someone like Cancelo, maybe if you've got someone like Trent, Reece James, Jose Gaia, so players like that, they're elite in all their stats, then maybe. But for me personally, I don't really use it. Defensive midfielder. Mid-table. Again, it's another one that I don't really use. If I was going to do that, I'd just go with an Anchorman. I'd just go with a halfback, sorry. Or I'd go with a deep line playmaker on defend over a defensive midfielder. It's just a very bland role, in my opinion. Deep line playmaker goes into that one. Let me make that smaller. I realise all the fonts are different sizes. I do apologise. It's a pain in the ass to make sure they're all the same size. There we go. The deep line playmaker, I think, is a great role. Unlike the defensive midfielder, it's not bland when it wins the ball back. It looks to play the balls out to the left, to the right. I feel like in a counter-attacking 4-3-3, ball winning deep line playmaker on defend, wins the ball back, plays the passes, fantastic. And last but not least, inverted wingback. I used to hate this. It's elite. It's just elite. The inverted wingback allows you to bolster your midfield when you're attacking and still have the same defensive duty when you're defending. They'll still go wide and high if there's no one in their way, but they won't if there isn't, and they'll tuck into midfield. I've loved using them at the moment. I'm playing a 4-1 like basically like a 4-1-2-1-2 narrow with inverted wing backs, a half back that drops back, which effectively creates kind of like a back three with 2 central midfield players, 2 central midfield players, a shadow striker and 2 strikers. And I feel like it's working really, really well at the moment. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I know I'm not a Football Manager expert. I can only go based on what I've used and my experience with these roles. I also know there's some roles not included on here. I've just never ever used them. And there's no point in me having roles on here that I can give a comment about when actually I haven't got a clue. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. The next tier system video we'll see will be ranking all the Premier League clubs' transfer windows. But yeah, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Got a tongue twister again, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.